I never used to be the kind of woman who grew up tough, stayed tough. It was a quiet getaway at Fontana Lake, North Carolina. Me, my husband Mike, and our friend Carrie packed up the truck and headed towards the spot, hoping to disappear for a weekend. Get drunk, get some sun. Fontana's the kind of place where the water looks black if the sun ain't hitting it just right, and the mountains chew up the sky around you. It was beautiful. The motel we found was just a few spits away from the lake. It was the off-season, late summer. Storms rolled through almost every afternoon, hammering the trees and filling the air with that thick, half the cabins around the lake were boarded up. We figured we'd have the place to ourselves. Second afternoon in, I was down at the water, poking through the shallows, when I lost one of my favorite earrings, a little silver one Mike bought me years ago. Slipped right out my hand into the muck. I dug around for it until my fingers were raw, but it was gone. Should have left it. Should have called it a loss. But no, I got it in my head that I had to replace it. I told Mike and Carrie I was heading into nearest general store. It was just a couple miles up the road, a bait shop and a general store that sold everything from canned peaches to rusty fishing lures. I figured I'd walk it. Needed to clear my head anyhow. That was my first mistake. I hadn't even hit the edge of town when I noticed the white Jeep. Old model. It passed me slow. The driver's window was down, but all I caught was the glint of sunglasses and a flash of teeth. I shrugged it off. Then it passed me again, coming back the other way. Slower this time. Like he was checking me out from head to toe. A cold weight settled in my gut. I tightened my fists and picked up my pace. By the third time, there was no mistaking it. He was following me. I ducked into the general store, heart pounding against my ribs like a hammer. I bought the first cheap pair of earrings I could find, hands shaking as I stuffed them into my pocket. The old woman behind the counter gave me a strange look, but I didn't say a damn word. I didn't want to seem scared. I didn't want to be scared. But I was. I took a longer way back toward the motel, cutting through a gravel lot and down a narrow dirt road lined with sagging trees. I kept telling myself I was fine. Kept lying to myself with every step. Then the Jeep came roaring out from around a bend and slammed to a stop right in front of me, throwing mud and gravel at my boots. I froze. Couldn't even breathe. The driver got out. He was too clean, too polished. Polo shirt, khaki pants, nice shoes, the kind of getup that screamed money, screamed not from around here. His skin was tan and slick with sweat, and when he spoke, it was in a thick Mexican accent, but twice as dangerous. "Hey, girl," he said, grinning like we were old friends. "It's not safe out here. You should get in." I backed up a step, heart hammering so hard I could taste it in my mouth. "No, thanks," I muttered, trying to step wide of him. But he moved with me, blocking my path like he had every right to. His smile twisted into something uglier, something hungry. "Come on, pretty girl," he coaxed. "Don't be stupid." When I turned to bolt, his hand snapped out and grabbed my arm fingers like iron clamps digging into my skin. That's when instinct took over. I didn't think. I snapped my head forward and bit into the soft flesh of his forearm with everything I had. Bit until I tasted his blood. He screamed, high and sharp, more shocked than hurt, and wrenched away from me. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I ran. I ran harder than I ever had in my life, vision blurring with tears and rage and pure survival. When I reached the motel, it was dead silent. No cars in the lot. No Hank on the porch. The office door hung open. I staggered inside, bleeding from my arm where he'd scraped me with his nails, and I screamed for Mike. It took a minute for him to find me. I was a mess, filthy, soaked, half hysterical. I told him everything, but when he asked if I wanted to call the cops, I shook my head like an idiot. I just wanted to be done with it. I wanted to crawl under the covers and pretend none of it happened. We didn't file a report, didn't make a scene. We packed our things and left the next morning without looking back. It wasn't until weeks later, when the bruises on my arm were fading yellow and sickly, when the nightmares started waking me up, gasping in the dark, that the real weight of it hit me. I could have had that son of a bitch arrested. Maybe saved some other woman who wouldn't have been fast or mean enough to fight back. Some girl who might have been hauled off into those woods and never seen again. People think they know the woods, but they don't. Not really. Not until you're out there alone, miles from anyone, when something or someone shows up that doesn't belong. That's when you realize just how small you are, how fragile, how unimportant. I was 25 in the prime of my outdoor adventures, and I'd been hiking the Appalachian Trail for years. It was a solo trip. The pandemic had people going crazy, trapped inside their houses, losing their damn minds. But for me, it was a blessing. No one was around. I could do what I loved, which was hiking. That day, I'd started early. I had my pack, my gear, and my trusty old knife, which I always kept within arm's reach. I wasn't stupid. I knew the woods. I knew the risks. I knew I had to be prepared for anything, especially in a place like this, the part of the trail that cuts through the North Carolina-Tennessee border. It's remote, dangerous, wild. By noon, I had made my way deep into the trail. It was the kind of isolation that made you feel like you were the only living thing in the world. Just the rustling of leaves in the wind and the crunch of my boots on the dirt. I had been pushing myself, taking the trail harder than usual, trying to outrun thoughts that had been haunting me since the lockdown started. A strange scream cut through the stillness, distant but unmistakable. I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard it again, louder this time. A woman screaming for help. I froze. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You're out there, alone. What do you do? That's what I asked myself, too. It's instinct to go toward the sound, right? Help. That's what we're all taught. What we all want to believe in, saving someone else, being the hero. So, I took a few tentative steps forward, listening hard. The scream came again, raw, desperate. It was off, though. It didn't sound right. It wasn't like someone in immediate danger. No, it felt rehearsed, like someone knew exactly how to scream. I kept moving toward the sound, heart hammering in my chest, a cold sweat on my palms. The trail narrowed, winding through thick patches of trees that blocked the sun, plunging me into shadow. That's when I saw him. I thought it was just another hiker. But as I got closer, something didn't sit right. He was tall enough to make me feel like a child standing next to him. Easily 6.5, maybe 7 feet. His clothes were ragged, but there was no pack. No gear. Nothing to suggest he was out here for the same reasons I was. "Hey," I said, "you need help." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured down to the ground beside him, where a patch of wildflowers bloomed in a riot of color. "Smell these," he said, his voice deep and unsettlingly calm. Something about that. It just didn't sit right. Who the hell asks a stranger to smell flowers in the middle of nowhere? It was so out of place, so bizarre that I felt my throat tighten. "No thanks," I muttered. I was about to keep moving, but he stepped in front of me, blocking the path. "You sure?" he asked, making the situation worse. "You should smell them. They're special." That's when I knew something was off. So I took a step back, keeping my eyes locked on him, my hand brushing the handle of the knife in my pack, just in case. I was no stranger to dangerous people, but this guy was something different. He must seen the shift in my posture, because his face twitched. Then he turned and walked into the trees. I stood there for a moment, my heart thudding in my chest. My instincts were telling me to go, to turn around and leave this place. But I didn't. I kept going. My senses were on high alert. Hours passed. I hiked deeper into the trail, trying to put the encounter out of my mind. I stopped for a quick break, sipping from my water bottle, but as soon as I stood to leave, a chill ran down my spine. The man, he was back. He appeared out of nowhere. This time, he wasn't standing on the trail. He was just there, behind me, watching. His eyes were locked on me, and that same unnerving smile stretched across his face. My breath hitched. "What do you want?" I asked. His smile widened. "Just making sure you're safe." "Safe? From what?" That was when I noticed how out of place he looked. My hand shot to my pack, pulling out my knife. But I kept it low, hidden from his view. He didn't move closer, just watched me like he was waiting for something, like he knew what I was thinking. I was terrified, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let my guard down. Not for a second. "I'm leaving," I said, stepping backwards slowly, never breaking eye contact. His smile didn't fade, not even when I turned and made my way down the trail at a brisk pace. I kept my hand on the knife, just in case. I rushed to my car. I didn't look back. I drove away fast. Still, I wonder, was he real? Was he just a man or something else? It's been years since it happened, but I still wake up in the middle of the night with my heart pounding, that terrifying sense of dread crawling up my spine like it's happening all over again. I think about it often. I was 24 years old then, just a few months into my relationship with Kyle. We'd been dating for about 6 months, and like a lot of young couples, we were eager to get away for a bit, do something spontaneous. We were on US Route 220, somewhere in the middle of Virginia, when our car suddenly sputtered to a stop. No warning, no strange noises before it happened. We were laughing and singing along to some cheesy pop song, and the next, we were stranded in the middle of nowhere with no idea why the car had died. "Great," Kyle muttered, trying the ignition again. But nothing happened. "I'll check under the hood," he said, getting out of the car. I sat there, alone in the silence of the car, watching the sun start its slow descent over the trees. There was nothing around us. No gas stations, no other cars, just a stretch of empty highway and wilderness. I looked at my phone and saw that there was no service, not a single bar. Panic started to settle in. We were completely cut off from the rest of the world. "Maybe I should go find help," I said, trying to sound calm, though the idea of being out there alone scared me more than I wanted to admit. Kyle glanced up at me from under the hood. "I'll figure it out," he said. "Just hang tight. It'll be fine." But I didn't feel fine. And when Kyle couldn't get the car to start again, he gave up, muttering curses under his breath. He suggested I walk up to the motel we had passed a few miles back to see if they could help. I didn't want to, but the thought of staying in that car, with the sun sinking lower and lower, was worse. "I'll be back," I said. "Stay here. Don't go wandering off." Kyle nodded and waved me off as I stepped out into the cool, creeping evening. The motel, which I'd seen only in passing, was a faint outline in the distance, a small, rundown place that looked like it hadn't seen a guest in years. It was the only hope I had for getting out of there. As I walked, the isolation started to settle in. The highway stretched endlessly ahead of me, the trees towering on either side like dark sentinels. I tried not to focus on how quiet it was, but it was impossible. It wasn't until I had walked I noticed the SUV behind me. At first, it was just a speck in the distance, but it gradually got closer until it was pacing me on the road. The SUV slowed down and then sped up, matching my pace. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just someone passing through. I quickened my pace, but so did the SUV. I glanced over. The vehicle was now much closer, It was a black SUV. There was something about the way it was following me that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. When the SUV finally pulled up beside me, my heart nearly stopped. The window rolled down, revealing the driver, a man in his late 30s, with a look on his face that made me uneasy the second I saw him. "Hello, where are you headed?" I wasn't sure how to respond. Alone, with no one else in sight. "Just up the road to the motel," I said, trying to sound casual, though I was anything but. "My boyfriend's car broke down. I'm just going to get help." He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "Well, you're a long way from civilization, aren't you?" I was stunned. "I'm fine," I said quickly. "I'm not getting in your car." "Thank you." He smirked, a slow, unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You sure about that? This road's dangerous, you know. A girl like you shouldn't be walking out here all alone. You might get lost, or worse." And I took a step back, instinctively moving away from the SUV. He didn't seem concerned about my safety, but rather like he was trying to convince me that I needed him. "No, thank you," I said, forcing myself to sound more confident. "I'm fine." He just stared at me, his gaze almost too intense. But I was lucky that night. It happened 3 years ago, but I still remember that night. I was coming back from a solo camping trip in the woods of Virginia. It had been a good trip, peaceful, isolated, just what I needed to clear my head. But on the way back, things went downhill fast. It was late, well past midnight, and I had one goal in mind: to find a cigarette. That's all I wanted. Nothing more, nothing less. A simple craving. But by the time I reached the main road, I wasn't thinking straight. I was high on weed and felt the need to stretch my legs, get some air. I figured I'd grab a pack and be on my way. I stopped the car in a dimly lit parking lot. It was empty. Not a soul in sight. That's when I noticed a car parked on the other side. The engine was off, but there were 3 men leaning against it, talking low, their voices indistinguishable from the hum of the night. At first, I didn't pay them much mind. Maybe I was just looking for an excuse to stay out of my car for a bit. Maybe I was just zoning out. But something caught my eye. They were too still, too quiet. It's hard to explain, but I felt like they were watching me. Not in the way a normal person would. I shook it off and started walking toward the small convenience store just down the street. I could already smell the stale air of cigarette smoke from the parking lot. I needed a pack, something to calm my nerves and stop this annoying buzz in my head. But as I got closer to the store, those 3 men started moving toward me. They were blocking the sidewalk now, making it impossible to just walk by without interaction. "Hey, man," one of them said. His voice was low but commanding. There was no kindness in his tone. I looked up at him, trying to hide my confusion. "What are you doing out here?" "It's late." I stared back, half in a haze from the weed, not really sure how to respond. I mumbled something about just going to the store, not expecting it to escalate. But before I could take a step forward, the other 2 men flanked me on either side. They were close, too close, and it was only then that I realized something wasn't right. One of them grabbed my arm, pulling me to a stop. "We're undercover cops. Let me see your ID." "Now." I blinked, trying to focus, trying to clear the fog from my mind. My heart started pounding in my chest as the reality of the situation began to hit me. There was no way these guys were cops. They didn't have badges, no uniforms, nothing that would have identified them as law enforcement. But I was in no shape to argue. I had no clue what to do. I felt stupid, standing there, high as hell, surrounded by strangers who were already treating me like I was guilty of something. My hands started to shake. "ID," the first guy repeated, his grip tightening on my arm. He was a big guy. Yeah," I stammered, fumbling through my pockets. I don't have it on me." I just came out to get a pack of smokes, man. The third guy started patting me down. I didn't know if he was pretending to search for something illegal or if he just wanted to make sure I didn't have a weapon. But that's when I realized they were robbing me. They weren't cops. They didn't care about my ID or who I was. That's when my heart dropped and panic set in. These guys were criminals, and they had me cornered. I couldn't think straight. The buzz from the weed was clouding my mind, and I felt dizzy, like I was spinning out of control. But in that moment, something inside of me snapped. I couldn't just let them rob me. I couldn't. I wasn't going to go down without a fight, well, at least a fight of my own. I knew I had to get out of this situation, and fast. I had no weapons on me, nothing that could really defend me. But there was one thing I had that could work in my favor: bluffing. "Look, man," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "You don't want to do this. I've got some German friends coming to meet me soon. They're big guys. You don't want to mess with them." I have no idea where that came from. It wasn't even a good lie. But something about it made them hesitate. They didn't believe me, but it was enough to make them second-guess what they were about to do. For a moment, everything went silent. I had to keep them on edge. And somehow, someway, I did. The guy holding my arm loosened his grip a little, and without another word, they backed off, letting me go. "Get us some beers from the store," the first guy said, almost casually. It was like they were giving me a last chance to redeem myself in their eyes. They weren't done, but they decided I wasn't worth the trouble. Not right now, at least. I didn't wait to ask questions. I turned and walked as fast as I could to the convenience store. I grabbed the first pack of cigarettes I saw and slammed down some cash. I didn't even check the change. I rushed back to my car. I jumped in, slammed the door, and sped off without looking back. I parked at a rest area to catch my breath and tried to wrap my mind around what had just happened. I had no idea who those guys were or what they'd planned to do. I didn't want to think about it anymore. I'm just lucky I made it out of there alive.